What is up, everybody? Welcome back. So today is going to be our first how to paint video for the Borderlands Mr. Torgue's Arena of Badassery miniatures that we are putting into our Bunkers and Badass game. I was having a hard time trying to figure out what miniatures to start first, but I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the miniatures that are basically the ones I'm least excited to paint. And it's not that I don't like the characters. I do like the characters. It's just that I'm probably going to use them less in my Bunkers and Badasses. So today we are going to start with Aurelia. Aurelia is Hammerlock's sister, and she is a frozen cryo type of enemy. So it's Aurelia Hammerlock, and she was basically the playable Baroness class character in Borderlands the pre-sequel, and the secondary antagonist of Borderlands 3. So you did fight her in Borderlands 3 and kill her. She is a Vault Hunter who was responsible for helping Handsome Jack rise to power, and is the sister of Sir Hammerlock. So, yeah. What I've been doing is I've been trying to refer some pictures, because that's what I kind of want to do with these models. So I did find one picture on the Borderlands wiki, like the fandom, and when you click on it, it gives you a bunch of different pictures. So we're going to switch over to another camera so that you guys can see what I'm talking about. Alright guys, so what we have here is the fandom pulled up. I have my Steam Deck running. This is my PC basically. So when you pull up the fandom, you can pull up characters and stuff, and when you click on the actual pictures, it'll bring up different things that you can kind of refer to. So you have different pictures of set characters. This is a really good one to reference right here. We have other ones like this. This is like kind of what she was going to look like in Borderlands 3. So I think what we're going to do is we're basically going to reference this photo, because this is how she ended up looking in Borderlands the pre-sequel. And then we'll refer to, we'll take that onto painting. So when you do see me painting, you might see this photo up in the background. I'm going to try to blow it up a little bit so that I can get a full picture of her. So I definitely figured that having all of the Borderlands miniatures just laid out on my table like this is the best option for me, because with my OCD, I'm going to want to get this all done so that's cleared up. So, yeah, this is literally my first video, and I didn't think I was going to start this until later on this week. Now that this is like this, I'm definitely starting it. So the first thing you want to do is you want to take your miniature and you want to prime it. You want to get a primer. I'm using the Army Painter color primer. I do have different primers. I have white, I have black, and I have gray. I'm starting to do a lot more of my priming in gray, because I like to do a Zenithal dry brush. Now you can do airbrush and with a Zenithal color pointing down, which would catch all the high areas, and then all the low areas would be dark. I like to do it by dry brushing, because I just feel like it just catches all the raised areas and it keeps all of the other areas where I need it to be. But gray is perfect for that, because this still catches paint and keeps the color really good without darkening it down. Black, usually when you put a layer of paint over that color ends up being really dark, and I don't want them to be too dark. I want them to just be dark enough. And I'm going to show you my dry brushing as well, so you guys can get a better concept of how to dry brush if you don't know how to dry brush, or if you're just completely new to painting, so you guys kind of get an idea. So we are painting Aurelia today. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to prime it, and then I'll show you guys how to dry brush it. Alright guys, so with the model now fully primed, I like to go over with a dry brush of this very light, it's called Dove Gray by Folk Art. And this is very cheap paint. But I would rather dry brush with this than using some of my AK paints or Citadel paints or stuff like that, because that is very costly. Another thing you should probably invest in or make, because you can make this too, is a wet palette. Wet palettes are everything. Keeps your paints wet and accessible for ever. Like, you can literally paint for a whole week on the same palette, depending on how much you paint and how wet you keep the palette, because you can keep adding water to this. And then what you're going to want to do is get a regular stupid fucked up brush. If you have any fucked up brushes, don't throw them away. Use them as dry brushes. This is just a regular cheap brush anyway. I paint with Artist Opus, but I'd rather not use that on shit like this. So we are going to just put a very small dab of this on our wet palette, and we're going to put it, let's say, over here somewhere, because we don't want too much of this on the palette. We just want enough. We just want enough to actually dry brush this. So we're going to just dab that. Get as much of this off as possible right here. And then we're going to hit up the miniature. You're not going to see anything crazy as of yet, but you want it to catch all of the raised areas. And what that does is makes all of the details on this miniature literally pop. Now this is done. You can see that all of the raised areas are lighter now. That's going to help you find where your details are while you are in the process of painting. So now we want to see what base coats we're going to put on. You want your details to be last, and you want them, the fine details, colors, to be basically the last thing you have to mess with, because a lot of paints can spill over. So it looks like we're going to do some blue. We're going to do blue first. So I decided to use an archaic blue, or archaic turquoise, as my base coat, and then with a lighter tone I'm going to kind of go over that with a I would say a Ducat blue, I believe it's called. So that's what I'm going to do with the blue area. I like to work from darkest to lightest. Some people like to work from light to dark. It's your preference, honestly. But make sure you shake your paints up really well. Also have a cup of water too, so you can, you know, dip your brush in the water and keep your point. We're going to go to our palette and put just a little bit there. This model's not too big. You don't want to waste too much paint. Some people put too much paint and then they end up losing it. So I'm going to wet that. I love an Artist Opus paint. So what we're looking at here to do blue is the coat area. The trim is actually gray, like a dark gray. And then on her boots, in between here, so like basically in between the boot section, that is blue. So basically her jacket and the in between here is blue. So I'm going to take some paint, and I like to be careful. Some people, they could be messy. It doesn't matter, it is your first coat, so you can be messy if you want to. It's going on quite thin, so I am going to have to do a few coats of this as well. Okay, now with the blue set, and that's going to be all the way around. There is some spill here and there, but it's okay. It's going to happen with your first coat. Just try to be as neat as possible. Unless you just want to slather it all in blue and then put all your highlights on top of that. You can do that as well. You can also prime it in blue and then not have to work with the jacket at all. But we're going to move to a darker gray, because the trim is like a dark gray and the boots are a dark gray. The very top here, though, is brown, so we're going to have to work with that. So we're going to do the trim, her hair in the same color, except for the one strip that is blonde. And then we'll work on a lighter gray to go over some of the metallic areas. And then we're going to dry brush a metallic paint over top of that. You don't want to just do it in straight metallic because it'd just be shiny and glittery. You can do that depending on what you're doing. So yeah, so we're going to go ahead and find a gray that would suit this, and I would think it would be, this is a gray, it's Tenebrae gray, and it is literally dark as hell. Now, it's like an almost black gray, but it works really well. Her pants are kind of on the lighter end, like in the middle of like a off-white, but still gray. So we're going to hit the trim up. We're going to work on the boots and her hair, because the hair is quite dark. You can also do the skin tone first too. If you're uncomfortable with spillover with the skin, you could start at the skin and then move on to the trim after that too. Either way, your hair is going to either clash with the skin or your skin's going to clash with the hair, either way. So that's why I'm just doing the trim first. So what you want to do, she also has white gloves too, so we want to go over that with a white. So what you want to do is you want to use the side of your brush as much as possible to catch that trim. Alright, so the next part we are going to tackle is going to be the light gray that's on her pants. So what we're going to do is we're going to go with a warm gray, because it's one of the lighter ones. I have a silver gray, but it's going to be too bright. So we use a warm gray. We'll try to put that on her. So just AK warm gray. I like to use AK paints. They're the best brand that I kind of learned to love. So we're going to get all the way to the brim here. Basically all of her pants. Alright, so now that the pants have their first coat with that warm gray, I kind of missed a little spot right here. Make sure that you look at your minis once it starts to dry a little bit. Some places can be opaque. You do want to go over that so that it's not see-through. So once that layer is on there, we're going to go for a darker gray, and I think what we're going to do is we're going to do basalt gray, and we're going to go over the shoe pieces, the bottom pocket here and over here. That way that's done. And trying to refer back to the picture, I think that's what is left for the gray. We might actually hit this too with it. These are also gray or silver, so we'll hit this up too. So I'm using basalt gray right here, AK Interactive. Put some on our palette. Just a drop. Even a drop can be too much, because one miniature is only so big. So we want to hit all of those areas. So the bottom pocket here is a darker gray. So we want to make sure we hit that area. It's very close to the color of the miniature, like the part that we dry brushed. You want to be somewhat careful here, but make sure if you do have any spillover, you can always go back and fix it with the paint previously, so this paint could be fixed. Now on the picture, it shows the same type of side here, over here. I'm going to layer it at the bottom there, because that's how the picture that I'm referencing looks. So we'll make that area like that, around the same size as this. Now what we're going to do is we're going to use a natural gray, and this natural gray is going to go right above the basalt gray on the sides there. It's just a simple little spot that has a lighter gray . So what we're going to do is we're going to use an off-white. That way when we want to go over with highlights, we can just use a regular white to do the highlights. So the off-white would be her hair, because she does have a white streak in her hair. So you want to make sure you hit that for sure. Then you have the piece, the fur, that is also around her neck. So you want to hit that up as well. And then you want to move to her gloves, and the white would technically be done. Alright, so the white is on. Let's see. All the way down to her gloves. And what we're going to want to do is we're going to work on a brown. So her boots have a darker brown. She is a little bit lighter skin. So what we'll do is we'll go for a deep brown first for the skin and the boots. We'll keep the boots at a deep brown, but then we'll highlight her face with a lighter brown when we get into the highlighting phase. So we're going to use deep brown. And we're also going to put the deep brown on the hilt of the gun as well. We're going to want to use a darker brown for the ground, because I like to base it with a brown. So the brim here of the boots will be brown. You want to be very careful when you get to her face. Because you don't want to get the brown onto the white area. But remember, this is just paint. You can always paint over areas that you messed up. And everything will be a-okay. Right here in the boot area. This brown is a little bit brighter than what I expected. It is a deep brown, so I was expecting a little bit darker. But it'll do. Okay, now when I was working on the brown, I did get some spillover onto the white, and I did have to fix it. It's what happens when you paint. So her lips are red, so I'm going to do a darker red for that. I do want to note to you guys that this model has a very tiny face. She does have a very tiny face, so just keep that in mind if you are ready to paint Aurelia. So what we're going to do now is we are going to move on to the gun area. That's where we're going to put a metallic. We're just going to coat that in like a gunmetal, and then we can work on our highlights. We are going to do the lips too, but that's going to be a very subtle red, very tiny little bit of red. So I have a gunmetal right here. We're just going to use a little bit, and we're going to just coat that area for the gun so it reads that it's a gun. You can also hit the knife blade as well. It's a very simple thing to do. Now I do like to glaze with speed paints because it kind of gives you that wash effect, but it doesn't dye down the colors as much as using a typical wash. So I hit this area up because there's a gray, a Graveborn or a Gravelord gray that you can use over metal, and it dyes it down just enough. Bless you, Harley. Dyes it down just enough so it doesn't have that crazy sheen that this model would have if I just left this just gunmetal. Alright guys, so I quickly did it. I don't know if you guys can see it or not. Let me see if I can pull it up as far as I can. Her lips are red now. And I used a burnt red for that. So burnt red is what I did. You want a darker red for that. Now before we actually get into glazing and stuff like that, we want to work on this base. I want to get a dark brown, so I'm going to use a dark rust for this. Or a hall red, which would be probably a little bit better. But you definitely want a darker brown for this situation. So I'm going to try to do a dark rust and see what that looks like. So for this part, I'm going to use a WizKid brush because these aren't like my artist opus. These are more expensive. So you want to use something that can just lather it onto the base. So I poured some on this. Now this is a little bit lighter than I expected. Makes sense because it's dark rust. So what we'll do, and that's too light. So what we'll end up doing is we'll take dark rust and we'll mix it with hall red and see what we get out of that. It's always trial and error when it comes to painting. Sometimes you won't have the color that you're looking for. Remember, it's paint, so you can always mix paints and try to get a color that you are looking for. This might be something that we're looking for. Yep. Right in the middle there. Because I definitely wanted an earthy kind of brown. You want to be mindful of the feet. Remember to use a less important brush unless it is an extravagant. If it's an extravagant like base that you did, then I would say use a regular brush, because if there's a lot of like tombstones or steps or stuff like that, you want to be able to hit them all up in a good way. We're also dry brushing over top of this too to hit all the raised areas. And it is okay if you get some of this on the feet of a character because they are treading through terrain. Their feet can be dirty. Okay, so as I stated earlier, I like to use Gravelord Gray and go over metallics with it. We're going to do a drop of that on the palette. Speed paints are watery, so they go on and just try to drop into the recesses. So we want to get that on the gun, basically all the areas that are metal, including the areas that are technically around her hand. You can also hit the handle up on this blade because it'll just make it a dark gray. Go underneath here, and the tricky part would be getting this spot right here. Now I'm gonna hit this little satchel thing, or this little like wristband thing that she's wearing, so it kind of gives it a gray look, but jumps into recesses. Now I don't know if you guys can tell, but now it's a darker metallic tone, so that is good. We also want to hit the feet up with that. So we'll go over to the thing and we'll hit them gray areas with it. You can actually hit the whole boot up with it. It won't hurt it. Just try not to hit the brown area or the blue, because we did hit blue. So just keep that in mind. And I am seeing right now, I did miss a spot of brown. So I'll go back to the brown and I will hit that area up. No one is perfect. You're gonna find spots as you paint that you might have missed. It's simply just stuff that we do when painting. I honestly hate these WizKid brushes. But they are good for painting things that that could potentially mess up a good brush. That's why there's always good things with these brushes. Alright, so what we're going to do now is we're going to go over the gray. Let's see if we can kind of water this down a little bit more. See if we can get the pants in a good way that we can coat it but not lose all of its color. Because you want to be able to keep its main color that you put down. Harley's barking at me. Harley, calm down. So now we got a little bit more depth there. And we will see what we can do with this gray with the blue. Because we might be able to just dye the blue down enough to give us a good shade. That's why I really love Gravelord Gray. Because you can put it over anything and it doesn't kill it. Now it will make that white. Not white, it will make it gray. So keep that in mind. If you're going over white with a speed paint of any sort, if you're glazing or not, it will make it whatever color that the color is. So that white will end up being Gravelord Gray, because that's what the paints are meant to do. They're meant to go over the white. So now we're going to go over the earth with a dark wood. It's the darkest brown that I have in speed paints. So we are going to just dab a good amount on there so that we will be able to dry brush over that with a lighter color. It's going to look really dark right now, but it's okay. You can actually mix it here and there in different spots as well. So now that we started we're going to start our highlight process. We're letting this dry, so giving that some time. we're going to start with the blue. So we did do a darker blue, which was archaic turquoise, right? So what we can go back with is Ducat blue. Now this is a very bright blue. Once we put the gray on there, it kind of dyed it down. So what we're going to want to do is probably go back with archaic, because once it's dyed down, the archaic is now going to be brighter than the same paint that we put on there. So do take that in consideration if you are putting something over the paint. You would want to see what the same paint would be highlighted over it, because it might give us a highlight. So you want to go over the wrinkled areas like this, very light. You want a very light hit on these areas. So something like this, something like this, and then the highest points, which would be her breast area. You want to make that bright because the light is hitting that the most. And then you want to hit the same areas, but just the raised areas. Over here would be a spot that maybe gets hit by light. So you just want to hit that area as well, because her arm is up and she is leaning that way. So you want to take that into consideration, that would be an area. So just like that. Back here we have more pieces that are wrinkles. Take your time here. Make sure you hit the areas that are closer to the light. Once you start putting edge highlights on, you're close to the finish line. I'm really close to the camera too. I don't know if you guys can see me or not. So you just want to hit certain areas that you think would be hit by the light. Okay guys, so I'm back. So we're gonna go do the browns with a light brown. We're only going to hit her skin up with the light brown. We're gonna leave her boots the way they are and the gun the way it is, because we want the skin to read as a different brown. We don't want that to be the same brown as the rest. With this being a this is a light brown right here. With this being a very small model. I mean, it's not too small, but her face is small. You want to make sure that you get just a tad bit on the brush and just hit the top of the cheeks. You want to hit the top of the cheeks, the little area on her forehead. You do want to hit her nose, because that would be an area that would be highlighted. So you do want to hit the nose. Maybe a little bit on the ear. Alright, so we're going to go through the boot area and the buttons here with a little like dashes of the metallic paint, because these are like metallic pieces. So like the boots, they are actually kind of metallic. You just don't want to make the whole boot metallic because it reads differently to people's eyes. You just want to kind of just get a metallic on the strand and then just dash it on there. Okay, so we have our light earth on the palette. We're going to just tab it to get as much off as possible and then see what happens with the base of this. I'm being careful because of the fact that I have the model already painted and ready to go. Yep, so it's kind of how the earth looks. Now, don't take this as the final piece, because the only reason why I'm doing it like this is because I'm adding the foam flocking on top of this, which would be this stuff. So how we do this, if I remember how to open the damn thing, this shit can be so messy. We put some glue on to the base there, and then we just sprinkle it over that. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull some glue down, and I'm just going to sprinkle some on there and then drop it as needed. Okay, so I sprinkled some glue on there. And then you tap it off. This can be really messy. I'm going to tap off the excess. And then I want to put some more on the back end here. So just some right there. I know you guys can hear Harley bitching and moaning. Harley, relax. And then we're going to tap off the excess. So it gives it that earthy look. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint the base of this black, because that's what I do. You don't have to do that. A lot of people stand by it, but I say paint the base however you want to paint the base, because this is your model. Whatever model you're painting, paint it the way you want to paint it. Don't follow everyone else's rules because they say it has to be done that way. So this final part is on your end. If you want to put a name on there, you can. I always do that with the Borderlands characters. But yeah, Aurelia is finally done. Alright guys, so that is how I painted Aurelia for Monster Fight Club's Borderlands.
hopefully this video helped you guys either break into painting or just helped you with the process of painting your Aurelia model. Of course, I started with Aurelia first because it was the least character, or the least exciting character that I have to paint. That's because I just really never played Aurelia. I maxed her out, but I really never tended to play her all the time. So from here on, I'm going to be picking and choosing which ones to paint. Because the rest of them, I do love the rest of them. Nisha might be the next one because I didn't play her as often either, but I do like Nisha's character. I liked Aurelia too, but just didn't play them that much. So if you guys have any suggestions on what model you want me to paint next, please leave that in a comment down below. Thank you guys for sticking through this very long video. I know this has to be a very long video because it does tend to be a longer process when I'm painting and filming at the same time, but just keep in mind that, you know, that's why the videos are long, because I'm trying to explain things and also do the process with you guys. So thank you for that. Remember to leave this video a huge like, subscribe if you haven't already, and I will catch you all in the next one. Bye.